Today we're going to take a look at Lightroom's tone curve, so let's get to it. First thing I'm going to do is clean up my workspace here and close down the side panel. And to note, we are in the develop module. Let's close down the basic panel and focus just on the tone curves. The first thing you're going to notice here is we have 5 different icons at the top, and we have selected this one right here, and this is the point curve. Over here we have the parametric curve, red, green, and blue, and we're going to go through each one of these as we go. Going back to the point curve, that's our default. So right here we have a graph inside this box. You can see here it's similar to our histogram, and this is all the pixel information in our photo. So essentially you can break this down into 4 different sections. All the way to the left you have the darkest point, and this is the shadows. Over here we have the dark, lights, and highlights. So if you think of the left being the darkest point, and as you move to the right, it's the lightest point. This is very similar when you're looking at the vertical y-axis. Darkest point down here, and as you move up, it gets lighter. Let's go back to the darkest point, and that's 0, so we click there. And now let's say we want to add a higher output to the shadows. Take this line here, and you'll notice we get that nice faded look. Our photo started at a 0 black point here, so as we go up, we're brightening the shadows. Now we can move over to the highlights, and let's try the same thing. So we're going to grab this point here, the lightest point, and go down. We've brightened the shadows, and we've reduced the highlights. So now let's try adding a little more contrast to this. Let's go over to the left where we have our shadows and darks. I'm going to go right in between, and what I'm going to do here is drag this down. And you can see that's adding more contrast, but we're keeping the shadows lifted here. So that section, this cube right here, we're only lifting the shadows. Let's go to the lights and highlights, go in between here, and let's push that up. There's before, and there's after. So now let's move on to the red, green, and blue tone curves. Let's go to the red, and you'll notice here we've got a red faded color at the top, and on the opposite side you have cyan. That's because cyan is the opposite of red. Moving along to the green channel, we've got green over here, and we have magenta here. Magenta is the opposite of green. And on the blue channel, we have blue at the top, and the opposite color is yellow. So this is where you can do some pretty interesting things. So let's do a split tone. So we're going to take the highlights, move it down towards the yellow, and we're going to take the shadows and move it towards blue, which is the opposite yellow. And we get this nice split tone effect, before and after. So once you understand the RGB channels and the opposite color, which is CMY, cyan, magenta, and yellow, you can do all kinds of color corrections or split tones and change the highlights, shadows, and midtones to whatever you'd like. And the best thing you can do is jump into Lightroom, put some points on some curves, and actually shift them around and see what they do. Push them to the extreme, and you'll see the different effects you can get. Now we can move on to our final curve, and that is the parametric curve. Let's go right here, the 2 little squiggles there. Give that a click, and you'll notice we have highlights, lights, darks, and shadows. And there's a couple of ways we can use this. So we can go down to the individual slider here, and let's say we want to reduce the highlights. You can see the curve automatically starts shifting when we shift this down too. Or if we want to grab a point on this curve, so let's go to the shadows. You can see shadows highlighted there at the bottom, right down here, and it shows you where the curve can go. And let's bring that down, and that's adding a bit more contrast to it by reducing the shadows. So again, the parametric curve works independently from the point curves, so you can add that additional edit to your photo. And here we have one final feature that works with all the different curves. If we go to the node right here, give that a click, you'll notice 2 little arrows, one at the top, one at the bottom, and this activates our direct editor, so we can actually go right on our image. And as you see here on the curve, I'm hovering on the highlights, you see highlights, shadows, and let's find our midtones. And what you can do here, let's go to the highlights and click, drag, drop that down so you can really fine tune your photo this way. So I'm going to go to the shadows here, just bring that down, just add a touch more contrast right about there. When you're done with it, you can give it a click and it goes away, and there you go. There's before and there's after. One last thing I'd like to mention, if we look down here, you can actually see the shadows, darks, lights, and highlights. And we have these 3 points right here. You can take this and you can shift sort of the tonal range. There we're getting more highlights as we push towards a light. And you can see that tone curve changing as I slide it across. So again, it's just one more thing you can do in the parametric curve to really fine tune your image. And to recap everything, let's go back to where we started. At the bottom here, we have dark to light, and on the side, we have dark to light. We've added some contrast with this nice curve. We've brightened the shadows, and we've reduced the highlights by going down. We've looked at the red curve, and we see the difference between red, cyan, green, magenta, and the blue curve. We have blue and yellow, and what we've done there is added a split tone by increasing the shadows, so we get more blue in the shadows. We're going towards blue. We've reduced the blue and added yellow in the highlights because we've gone down in the highlights. And we use the parametric curve just to add a few more fine-tune adjustments. And we've taken a look at this little tool right here where we can adjust our curve right on our photo. So that was a quick look at tone curves in Lightroom. If you liked the video, please hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.